And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Welcome to the Michael Gaddis Show on KCBQ AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis. I am a top producing real estate broker, a licensed California attorney, and a NMLS licensed mortgage broker. I truly am San Diego's real estate expert. I am here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. to discuss anything and everything related to San Diego real estate. As always, I welcome any questions or issues that you would like to hear me discuss on the show. There are several ways that you could contact me. First, you could call me at 888-242-2272, 888-242-2272. You can also email me at michael@michaelgaddis.com. That is michael@michaelgaddis.com. One of the areas of law that tends to apply to a lot of people that don't even realize that they need it is estate planning. And the sad thing is that most of the time when people realize they need estate planning, it's when it's too late. So I had my special guest today who is one of the top estate planning attorneys in all of San Diego. It's Joel Weisler of Weisler Law Group. His website is wealthpreservationattorneys.com. That's wealthpreservationattorneys.com. And his name is Joel Weisler. And he's going to be here to talk to us about some various aspects of estate planning, elder law, and asset protection. So, Joel, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Pleasure's mine.
Well, Joel, one of the things I'd like to start with is just kind of what I just mentioned, is that I think a lot more people are in need of estate planning than they probably really realize. Can you tell us the importance of estate planning?
Estate planning is all about control. When you're in good health, while you're alive, you want to control your assets. You do it by signing your name or nowadays by pushing in a PIN number. Estate planning on a basic level is all about what happens if you cannot sign your own name, if you can't punch in that secret PIN number.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was at a reverse mortgage event a couple weeks ago. And while I was at this event, a lady approached me. She told me that her mother, herself, and her brother and her sister were all on title to a property together. All four of them were on title. What happened is that her mother has severe dementia. In fact, her mother was there with her, and I kid you not, she had her in this wheelchair that was kind of laying back, and it almost looked like a baby carriage that she had her in. And she says, "This is my mother. She's got severe dementia. She's incapacitated. We're all on title to the property." She goes, "But none of us know what to do because there is no trust. There's nothing. And now we want to sell the house because we want to be able to get the proceeds to help, get some long-term care for her, but we don't even know where to begin." I mean, is that kind of something like, what you're talking about?
It is. If you don't make prior provision, if you don't have a trust, if you don't have a power of attorney, the government, California, has a solution for you for those sorts of signature problems. Unfortunately, during lifetime, it's what we call a conservatorship. Other states call it a guardianship. And it's a process where the family has to go into court and someone has to be appointed to act for them, to act as their parent, for the equivalent of a parent, to be able to sign their name and handle their financial affairs as well as their medical affairs.
So because there was no planning in place in this particular situation, in order for them to sell the property like they wanted to, they would have to go to court, get a conservatorship, and then have that person basically act as their, as their power of attorney, so to speak. Is that what it is?
Unfortunately, that's true. Now, for what level of competency someone needs to execute estate planning documents, if someone has the beginnings of dementia, the beginnings of Alzheimer's, that sort of diagnosis does not mean that they're not competent. The key thing is that they be able to say that they know who their family is, that they know roughly what they own, and that they know who they want to have act for them.
Well, let me ask you a question. Another thing I hear a lot about is somebody says, "Well, I don't need a trust. I have a will," or what is the difference between a trust and a will, and which one is probably the better option?
A will is a set of instructions that, after someone passes away, are ordinarily presented to a court. The court then empowers someone to act as the executor. Usually, it's a person nominated in the will, though it isn't always. And then that person can act to administer their affairs. A trust is active both during lifetime and after you pass away, and provides for that continuity of signature without getting the government involved.
Well, and I think that's really important, because what you're saying is that people who don't prepare are basically relying on the provisions of the state to basically take care of their estate after, if something happens to them. And I don't think people really realize what that means. That means that they're not going to have a say per se in how things go. It's going to go basically to default law. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. We've got two primary judges who hear all the probates in San Diego County. When you go before them, you hope that they're in a good mood, so that everything goes smoothly. But even when things go smoothly, we used to have multiple courts, lots of judges handling probates. With the budget cuts, we don't anymore. That means that the average probate doesn't take just 9 months, doesn't take a year, but is slipping out to 18 months or 24 months before the family gets the property.
So what that means is basically, and I'm assuming that with a trust, you could cut that time down considerably because everything is already allocated for. Is that correct?
Exactly. With a trust. Now, it doesn't mean that there's nothing to do when you use a trust, but the paperwork is quick and simple. And if the family, for instance, wanted to sell a house within a month, put it on the market after someone's passed away, they can do that.
Right. And, I think we were talking about something, and I know what everyone's thinking. People are driving in their car right now listening to us, and they're probably saying, well, I don't need this. This conversation is for, people who are older than me. That's not true. And before the show started, you and I were having a conversation, and you mentioned that, especially in like real estate deals, when someone buys a house, they should really put some sort of estate. I mean, ideally, they would put an estate plan into place at the point that when they buy a house. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. Your example is, people are driving down the road listening to us. All of us drive on the freeway, and when you drive on the freeway, you don't know which day is yours.
Well, that's true. I mean, who knows? And that's where, I think people, and I think they have this sense that, because they're not, and the same thing goes with elder law. They think, oh, well, elder law doesn't apply to me. It applies to older people. But that's not true, because we all have loved ones that are nearing that age, and and we care about them. So these are areas of law that I don't think people really put a lot of, emphasis in until sometimes either it's too late or it's further down the line, when I think that it's probably ideal that, everyone should have some sort of estate plan in place.
Well, there can be huge surprises when you don't. I mean, taking you, for example, you've got a young child. If you did not have a trust in place, if you had not made other arrangements, and there are some things you can do title-wise to delay the possibility of probate, if you were to pass away, suddenly your child would be the rightful heir to part of your house. If your wife needed to sell the house, wanted to mortgage the house, now they have a minor who has control, and they would have to go to court to get permission to put a mortgage on the house or to sell the house.
Well, that I had never really thought about that. I mean, can you imagine what kind of, handcuffs and hurdles would be put into place? And you're referring to the default law that would take over because I didn't have a plan in place, correct?
Exactly.
And that's really, really important, because the other thing is let's say you do pass away, or let's say you and myself and my spouse pass away at the same time, and I have two young children. Who's going to take care of them? I mean, where are they going to go? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
If you want to control who takes over parenting your children, you need to designate who you want within your estate plan. Very, very important. But not just if something happens to you long term. What happens if both you and your wife are in the hospital from a car accident at the same time? Who has a legal right to have your children with them? If you don't make a provision, in theory, social services can go pick up your kids, and now they're off in a shelter.
Well, you just brought up another point. Well, who makes the decision if we're in the hospital, right? I mean, if I'm in the hospital and I'm in some sort of state, who makes those medical decisions for me? Isn't that another area that people should be concerned about?
It's a huge area, and it's one that very much touches me, because I've seen what happens when there aren't correct provisions in place. in California, we have what's called an advance directive, which is very, very similar, essentially a power of attorney for healthcare purposes. In it, you can designate who can sign for you to authorize or hold back on medical care if you can't sign for yourself.
You know, and I guess what this discussion is doing to me personally, it's making me think in my head about all the things I should, make sure that are in place. Because, I mean, I do have two small children. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. And, the last thing I want to do is if something happens to me or me and my wife simultaneously, I don't want to necessarily leave them without, a plan or something to go. I mean, it's scary to think about that some people out there driving right now or listening right now might be, it's like playing with fire. You just don't know what's going to happen at any given time.
Well, and older style estate plans didn't do a great job of providing for kids. They might give it to a relative to then, in theory, watch over the kids. But if that relative got out of line, it was a problem if they didn't do what they were supposed to do. A more formal, the newer trust, you can provide parenting through the trust itself. So, for instance, you may want your children to receive the same level of care, health, and support that they do as minors while they're young children. Well, you probably spoil your kids a little bit. When they get to college, you want to provide for them at a student level, not necessarily at what they had when they were living with you when they were younger. They get out of college, you don't want to just give them a lump sum of money that gives them an excuse not to work. You want to give them incentives to work so that they are part of life in the workforce.
Well, we're going to continue this conversation after the break about the children because I think it's a really important one. So after the break, we'll come back and talk to Joel Weisler of the Weisler Law Group more about estate planning and the needs for estate planning. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
AM 1170, The Answer.
Hey, Craig Sewing here, consumer activist. You hear me every day at 6 p.m. on KCBQ. My goal is to help you win in any marketplace. One of the things that applies to every single person that listens to our show and that's listening right now, you have a credit score, and more likely than not, it has inaccuracies on it. Nobody seems to understand how these things work. Here's what I can tell you. I have a credit expert that's a partner in the show named Aran Sinai. I call him the credit magician. If you've ever had any issues with your credit, you want to get your scores up, maybe a foreclosure, bankruptcy, or maybe just a collection. The city of San Diego can send parking tickets to collections. Crazy. Well, bad credit's a choice. Reach out to Aran Sinai. How do you do that? You go to our website, AmericanDreamElite.com. AmericanDreamElite.com. Hit me up on the contact form. I'll connect you with Aran. AmericanDreamElite.com. If you've ever had any credit issues whatsoever, AmericanDreamElite.com.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. DRE 0146543 and MLS 28001.
Hi, this is AJ Gupta from the Gupta Legal Center. You've probably seen us on the American Dream TV show and the Craig Sewing radio show. We're honored to be featured as the exclusive real estate attorney and honored to be trusted by Craig and all of his top producing realtors. Our office was also featured as a super lawyer representing California's top 5% of attorneys. You may not know whether you need an attorney or not. My suggestion is you kind of have an idea whether there's a problem or a question. So I suggest if you don't know whether you need an attorney or not, give us a call. We're happy to pick up the phone, give you a call back, figure out what it is that you need to have addressed. If we can't or don't know the issue, then we can definitely point you in the right direction. Our phone number is 619-866-3444. That's 619-866-3444, and that's GuptaLC.com. GUPTALC.com.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. I am Michael Gaddis of MichaelGaddis.com, and my guest today is Joel Weisler of the Weisler Law Group. He is one of San Diego's top estate planning attorneys. Before the break, Joel, we were talking a little bit about children, and I wanted to touch base on that a little bit more because one of the things I'll use the example, and I'm sure you know about it, Bing Crosby. When Bing Crosby passed away, he had a trust for his 4 sons, and the trust provided that they were not going to be able to get the proceeds of the trust, I think, until they were like 60 years old, I think is what it was. And the interesting fact about that is that of his 4 boys, only 3 lived to be 60, and I think 1 lived like a year or 2 beyond the age that he was going to give it. Now, the reason I bring that example up is because just an idea you were mentioning earlier, you don't want to give your kids a big lump sum of money. And I know Bing Crosby's probably the opposite extreme of that. But what do you think as far as is a good kind of plan for a child, for planning for a child when you have an estate of some considerable amount of money?
It varies a lot. It depends a lot on the child. And it depends on your own philosophy. For some people, they want religious education as part of what their child has. They want to provide for that in their trust. For others, it's a matter of easing them in, making sure that they're productive. Now, I'm having more and more individuals, even seniors, who are delaying the distributions until retirement age. So in some ways, Bing Crosby was well ahead of his time. And the reason they're doing that is fewer and fewer people have money put aside for their retirement. They see their kids, they don't have retirement plans, so they put aside at least part of the inheritance to grow over time so that it's there later on. For many people, they look at, after college age, some sort of matching formula so that your child earns $1, they get $0.25 from the trust. Or for the people who are more generous for their kids, trust that they'll do more, it may be $1 for $1 match until they reach some age a little bit later on. Then they may go with a lump sum distribution, or they may let the child become more involved in running their own trust. Because many parents look at their kids, and their kids are young, their kids are teenagers or early 20s. What will their spouse be? What is the risk of that inheritance disappearing in a divorce? Or if the child is an entrepreneur, for business owners themselves, kids tend to follow in your shoes, do their own thing later on, have their own business. If their business fails, will the inheritance you've left to them disappear also? But as a parent in your estate plan, you can protect what you're passing on from that.
Well, you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer, and we're talking to Joel Weisler of the Weisler Law Group. His website is wealthpreservationattorneys.com. I brought up Bing Crosby, and I guess I'm not a Bing Crosby hater. I actually enjoy Bing Crosby. I grew up in Bing Crosby. I grew up with my grandmother and my grandfather. I've watched every single Bing Crosby movie on the planet. In fact, he was very influential when I was growing up. I thought he was Father O'Malley, okay? I really thought that was him. And then when I learned that he gave his kids his wealth at 60, I started second guessing him. But it's funny, I've carried that story around, and you're the first person that actually had it made any sense whatsoever. I almost thought he was being vindictive about it, that leaving it not till 60 years old for his kids to get it. But what you're saying makes sense. I mean, basically what Bing might have been doing is saying, hey, look, I want you guys to retire and have money, and I don't want you to blow this money. And I'll tell you, when I went to law school, the person sitting next to me, I think it was in criminal law, they were a trust baby, and that guy had the nicest car. I'm sure he blew through all his money. I know he did. I mean, he was spending money left and right. So maybe there is some wisdom in planning something, but here's the point I think I'm making about it. You have to plan. You have to have something in place. And I think if you do nothing, you leave yourself at the mercy of the state law, and you might not of course, you might not know the difference, but whatever you leave, if you care about your children and your family and your beneficiaries, you might not like what they're going to have to go through after you're not here.
Absolutely true. And that's one of the big dangers with the standardized trusts that are out there. There are a lot of attorneys and even some paralegal firms that are selling trusts that everyone gets almost the exact same thing. It doesn't reflect the clients, what they want for their kids, what they want for their family. If you have substantial assets, you want to provide enough for your kids to allow them to do anything they want, but not enough to allow them to do nothing. If you have more modest assets, you want to look at the parenting aspects. What's important for you to be there for? Do you want to have money set aside for your daughter's wedding? Do you want to help one of your kids go into business? Do you want to provide a down payment for a house? And maybe the trust becomes a co-owner of the house, so that if they are getting remarried or they're married at that time, that equity won't disappear to their spouse.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's one thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. And I refer to these trust mills that basically promise you just generic template documents that you can input some basics to. And, they charge, I don't know what they charge, but it's nominal amounts of money to do this. And, I think the old adage, you get what you pay for. I mean, this happens in every industry. There are people who just don't want to pay for quality service. And the problem is they don't realize what they're missing until it's too late. And then after that, they've either made a huge mess of the situation or they regret it to the point where, then they have to go and pay somebody a lot of money to clean up the mess that was caused. And when you are thinking about getting an estate plan, I strongly recommend that you talk to somebody like Joel who actually knows what he's doing. And it might cost you a little bit more than one of those mills, but you're going to get the same type of thing. If you go, for example, have somebody do your taxes on the street corner versus going to somebody who actually is a CPA and knows how to do this, and it pays for itself in the end, people. I mean, I'm telling you, you could tell by the tone of my voice, I'm a little frustrated because this whole point about these mills that are coming in and doing it, and I'm sure, Joel, your opinion is probably the same. You'll probably express in a much more professional manner than I am, but these mills, they just don't understand the nuances of the law. They don't understand how these things interact or how you can utilize things to put it together. Isn't that true?
It's very true, but it isn't just mills. There are a lot of estate planning attorneys that, because of the price pressure those mills have put on them, they're not doing the job they should. They're not taking the time to explain to people how to use their trust. You do a will, you put it away in a drawer. When you die, your family files it with the court. With a trust, it's something you have to live with and deal with, where you want to customize it to your family. And if the attorney hasn't taken the time to do that, you've bought a really cheap parachute. And when the time comes for it to open, when you've jumped out of this life, or becoming incapacitated, you don't know that it'll do the right thing. And it's not you that will land hard, it's your family.
Well, that same thing happens in real estate. You have all these discount real estate people going, I'll sell your house for 2%. I actually saw a picture the other day that had two benches next to each other near a bus stop. One of the benches says, I'll sell your house for 1.5%. The bench next to it says, don't overpay. I'll sell it for 1%. I mean, it just gets to the point where it's ridiculous because if you think about that, I'll give you a real estate example that'll do it. When you do that for real estate, do you really think that a real estate broker or whoever's doing that 1% or 1.5% is putting 100% of their energy into that? No, they can't possibly do it. Their overhead is too high. What are they going to do? They're going to go out and generate volume is what they're going to do. They have to generate more business. So they can't commit to really selling your property, and you're going to pay for it in the end. And the same thing goes with this. If you go cheap, you're going to end up getting something that like you said, you're going to regret when it's time to open that thing up and you start looking at it. You're going, oh, if you only would have done this, or if you only would have done X, Y, and Z, it would be different.
If somebody opened it up and saw what they had, that would almost be a wonderful thing. It's amazing how many people they meet with the estate planning attorney or the trust mill. The trust comes home, it goes on the shelf, it goes in a drawer, and they never look at it again. And it does need maintenance, it does need attention, but if it hasn't been explained what is needed, that will never happen.
You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer, and we're speaking to Joel Weissler of the Weissler Law Group, wealthpreservationattorneys.com. Joel, I want to ask you another question. I know a lot of people out there are probably listening thinking, well, I got a trust. I got one 25 years ago, so I'm good. I don't really need anything. What would you say to that? I mean, what would you say to somebody who received a trust 25 years ago and it's been sitting in their file cabinet for that long?
Back 25 years ago, there was a lot more that was automatically included in a trust. But because we've become more conservative, legally conservative, I should say, the documents have to have the provisions directly in them. The older trusts don't have it. They also don't reflect changes in society and the way we look at things. Most older trusts don't provide for the fact that we are going to get older. Our capacity is not going to be as full. Most trusts provide that if you can't manage your own business affairs, you lose all control of your assets. Your successor trustee steps in. Modern trusts will provide for variable capacity, giving you as much control as you can handle unless you're a threat for yourself. Even worse than that, more and more times we see kids, grandkids, brothers, sisters who are beneficiaries of trusts who are disabled. And the older trusts didn't look at that possibility. If one of your beneficiaries becomes disabled and then goes to receive a lump sum distribution from you, they are going to lose their benefits, their state benefits, if they have any. They're going to have to spend down what you've left to them and only then requalify for their state benefits. Instead, a more modern trust will provide a backup, a safety net trust within it of a special type, which is called a supplemental needs or special needs trust. And that trust will not count as their asset for benefits purposes, but will be able to provide the extras to them that state government programs don't provide.
So this is something, and the reason I asked that question is this is something that I see a lot because as people know, I help people with reverse mortgages, and when a lot of people who get a reverse mortgage already have their property in trust, and so as part of the underwriting process, the bank wants to see the trust to make sure it's not conflicting with any of the provisions of the reverse mortgage, and so they have to do a trust review. And it's when people give me these trusts, sometimes, I mean, they'll go into their file cabinet and literally hand me this little packet with the paper looks like it's all, from 50 years. It's like, it's discolored and it's the edges, it's yellow. And I'm like, have you had anybody look at this recently? And, they're like, well, no, but we think we're good. But you're telling me from now on, I should tell them, no, really, it's worth your time to have your trust reviewed.
It makes such a big difference, and when you see old paper that's crumpling, that means the attorney never took the time to choose to use acid-free paper. And those little things make a big difference. Trusts need to last for a long time. I mean, when I started doing estate planning, our average trust was 20 to 30 pages. Now to do a competent trust, and do it the right way, you're looking at close to 100 pages when someone's family situation isn't very complicated.
Well, when we get back, we're going to continue our conversation with Joel Weissler of the Weissler Law Group. We're going to talk more about estate planning, and we're going to start broaching a topic that I think we all want to hear about: taxes. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
AM 1170, The Answer, and AM1170theanswer.com.
Hey, San Diego, Craig Sewing here. Look, one of the things that nobody likes to hear is that they got bugs in their home. Almost all California homes have some sort of bug or termite problem. It's not a cool thing to have bugs running around your house, so I'm going to help you get rid of them. I want you to connect with Lloyd's Pest Control. These are our good friends of the Craig Sewing Show. They can help you. They've been in business, putting bugs out of business since 1931. They'll do a free inspection for you. If you want to get your biggest investment checked out, make sure there's not bugs or termites, go to LloydPest.com. That's LloydPest.com and get a free inspection of your real estate today.
Did you know that you can make up to 6 times more with vacation rentals than with long-term leasing? By investing in vacation rentals and partnering with Vacasa, you can cash your check while we do all the work. Vacasa is a full-service vacation rental management company. We handle everything from guest marketing and booking to home maintenance and security. If you want more information about Vacasa, please visit online or call 503-305-4520. Again, that's 503-305-4520. Or visit Vacasa.com. That's Vacasa.com. Vacasa, vacation rentals made easy.
Hey, Craig Sewing here. There's no shortage of commercials out there, whether it's TV, radio, even social media. And heck, I even saw an infomercial for solar. You see it everywhere these days. Well, it's because solar is important. It can reduce your electric bill. It's good for the planet. And it's just a great thing to do with your home. It can add value to it. However, there is so much misinformation. Just because somebody is out there advertising does not make them a reliable source. I want to introduce you to my good friends with Baker Electric Solar. The owner, Mike Teresa, I've got to know him really well. This is the only company that I would recommend for you to reduce your electric bill through solar energy. Such a smart move. It's time to do it. Here's how you reach out to them. BakerElectricSolar.com. BakerElectricSolar.com. They will talk to you for free. They'll give you an assessment, and they will help you reduce that electric bill. And again, this is the only group that I trust. BakerElectricSolar.com.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. DRE 0146543 and MLS 28001.
Going through divorce can be very stressful. It is important to know your rights. I'm attorney Ilona Antonian. I'm a certified family law specialist. For over a decade, I've been helping San Diegans win their divorce and custody cases. If you have questions about divorce, property division, child or spousal support, modification of orders, or find yourself in a custody battle, please call us at 619-696-1100. Find us online at expertdivorcelaw.com, where you can download our free divorce, mediation, and recovery guides that I hope you find useful.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis, MichaelGaddis.com. My special guest today is Joel Weisler of the Weisler Law Group. That's WealthPreservationAttorneys.com. Joel is one of San Diego's top estate planning attorneys. Before the break, I mentioned that we were going to talk about a little topic that everyone likes to talk about, which is taxes. Why don't you tell us the effect or the impact of estate planning on taxes?
Estate planning falls into taxes in three different areas. First is estate taxes itself, and that's changed a lot, and we don't know how soon it is going to change again. Right now, each individual can give either during lifetime or death time, well, as of January 1st, it'll be up to $5.43 million without there being any tax. Then we also look at yearly gifting. Without counting against that $5.43 million, each person can give $14,000 a year to any person that they want, and as many people as they want. They can also pay tuition at school without being subject to a gift tax or estate tax. But with this change up to $5.43 million, many people felt that they don't need estate planning, but they still do because we don't know what the exception will be in the future. And as I said, estate planning is about control first. Now, for a married couple, they can, with a bypass trust, pass twice that amount without there being any estate tax, or if they choose not to have a trust, choose not to have a set of B-trust provisions, they're able to file an estate tax return when the first person passes away and still preserve that first spouse's exception from tax, unless the surviving spouse remarries. The only problem is that doing an estate tax return, in most cases, it's at least a $10,000 bill.
Well, let me ask you a question. You mentioned before about the gift tax, right? What is the amount that somebody can give somebody, no matter who it is? What's the limit on that?
Well, it's $14,000 for gift tax purposes, although the rules are different, and you can really get stung if you're senior and are gifting that amount. It can cause penalties where you don't receive certain benefits. But for individuals who are younger, who are healthy, $14,000 per kid, per nephew, anyone you want, $14,000 without needing to file a gift tax return or counting against your lifetime death time exemption.
Look, I don't expect anybody who's out there listening right now to remember everything that Joel just told you, but I do expect you to think about this. Obviously, there are things you can do to avoid taxes that you might not be aware of. I'll give you an example. Joel mentioned something about tuition right now. You said that you can pay tuition and it's not subject to taxation. Is that what you were saying?
Not subject to gift tax.
I did not know that. I mean, so right there, I just learned something right here. And I think what that means is when you talk to somebody who is proficient in what they do, when you're talking to somebody who is one of the top in their field, you learn things like that. I literally did not know that.
But the biggest thing in estate planning on taxes isn't looking at the estate tax. That affects a smaller percentage now. We first look, especially here in San Diego, at property taxes. Now, many people hold their properties as joint tenants. That means that it'll pass automatically to the surviving spouse, to their joint tenant when the first one dies. Now, that seems a good thing, but from a tax point of view, that can be a catastrophe. When you own something and you pass away, your cost for income tax-based purposes of that asset increases to the fair market value of that asset at the time you die. So when your heirs receive it, they are able to sell it without there being any income taxes. And if you're below that estate tax mark, that is the gold standard best way to do it, to pass things so that there's no income tax built in. Now, if you hold something with your spouse as joint tenants, it's considered that you each own only half, and only half of that property will get that increase in basis. So if the house you bought for $50,000 30 years ago is now worth $500,000, held in joint tenancy, well, the deceased spouse gets their increase in cost to $250,000. The other spouse still has a $20,000 basis. The amount above that is profit. Now, if they've moved out of the house for a period of time before it's sold, and then they have to sell it, that's going to be a bad sting capital gains tax-wise. On the other hand, if they hold it as community property with right of survivorship, or community property within a trust, they'll get a 100% step up in basis. If that survivor needs to sell that house, it'll be worth the full value that the house, it'll have a cost above which there's tax, but not below it, of equal to what the value was at the time of the first spouse's death.
Well, you just mentioned something that, again, I hear a lot. In real estate transactions, whenever, we're in escrow, one of the things that happens is, the escrow will send out escrow documents, and one of the things they ask the buyers is, how do you want to take property? And I know that there are, I don't know how many people out there with real estate licenses. There are a bunch of people out there, and the buyer always looks to them and they say, how should I take property? How should I put it into the... And it always boggles my mind, because I'm thinking, you're asking someone that is not qualified to answer that question, and the impact of answering it incorrectly could be huge. So I think what Joel's telling us here is he's giving you all some very valuable advice for free, basically on ideas on how you need to address that issue. I guess what you were saying earlier is, first put it into a trust.
First choice, a trust is community property. Second choice, community property, assuming you're married with right of survivorship. And then look at the other choices. Well,
let me and see if you could clarify one thing for us while you're here. I'm just going to pick your brain for a minute. What is the basic difference between community property with right of survivorship again and joint tenancy with right of survivorship?
Although both of them transfer it, community property, each person is considered to own an undivided interest in the whole. So you get a full step up in basis. Joint tenancy, you each are considered to own separate halves, and you only get a half step up.
Wow, right there. Valuable information for all of you. Whoever's listening right now, you just got some really valuable information. So, I think that we're going to move on now to talk a little bit about something that I think is also really important, and that's called asset protection. So tell us a little bit, what is asset protection?
Asset protection is reducing your exposure to risks. There are three basic rules to asset protection planning. The first is you separate risks from each other. The second is you separate value from risk. And the third, you take those things of value and you isolate them so that if something happens that couldn't be contained, you have a business, and instead of it being contained in the corporation, they pierce the corporate veil, they go after you personally. That asset is safe from that kind of event.
Well, I mean, and you're saying some pretty scary things. And I know a lot of people out there are saying, well, that might not necessarily apply to me. I don't have assets that need to be protected, but I think they might, and they don't even realize they do.
We all carry insurance. How much insurance do you carry for your car? How much do you carry for your house? There are limits. We can only afford so much. And unfortunately, with the cost of insurance, you can usually carry enough insurance to cause someone to be killed, to pay for someone to die, but you can't carry enough insurance to disable someone or several people for the rest of their lives.
Well, who are the best candidates for asset protection? If I asked you who is your ideal client, what type of person is the person that approaches you for asset protection?
Well, not everyone who needs asset protection is my ideal client, but anyone who has assets that are exposed. If you don't want to have to start over, you need asset protection or a risk reduction planning really to be in place. If you're a business owner, there are incredible things we can do to protect what you have. If you've been successful in business as an employee, you've built up a large nest egg, there are things that can be done to protect that in case something goes wrong.
How about a person that owns many rental properties, like 5 or 6 different rental properties? Would they be a good candidate for asset protection?
It's amazing how many people come into my office. They own a whole group of rental properties, and they've done nothing to protect themselves against what can go wrong. It's like they're running naked through a field where someone's shooting arrows at them. All you have to do is have someone fall out of a second-story window that didn't have a screen, get crippled for life. Your insurance isn't going to be enough to cover that. If you haven't done asset protection planning, like dominoes, everything you have can fall.
So business owners, attorneys, doctors, these are all professions, and, people who own multiple, in rental properties. These are the types of people that really, everyone should kind of consider it, but these are the people who should really consider it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, after the break, we're going to talk more with Joel Weissler of the Weissler Law Group and wealthpreservationattorneys.com. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
This is AM 1170, The Answer.
What if you could safely grow your retirement account with a reasonable rate of return with no risk of principal? Hi, this is Dave Harris with Wealth Preservation, specializing in retirement income and insurance planning. There's nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans protect and grow their retirement savings. For over 4 decades, we have helped families achieve financial success. If you need help with your retirement planning, please visit me online or call me today. My number is 800-313-PLAN, or visit me online at wealthpreservationllc.com.
Hi, this is John Beaudry, the landscape contractor. There's nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans create gardens where they can spend time outdoors in our fantastic weather and save money on their water bills. I've helped hundreds of people create outdoor spaces where they can literally live outdoors. If you need help with your landscape, I'll be happy to discuss it with you for free. No strings attached, just great advice. My number is 619-929-9140, or visit me online at beaudrydesign.com. That's BEAUDRY design.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. DRE 0146543 and MLS 28001.
Your home should be a place that you love coming to. Hi, I'm Nikki Klug, interior designer, and there is nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans live in homes that they fall madly in love with. I've helped hundreds of homeowners experience a sense of luxury, rejuvenation, and inspiration in their everyday lives. If you need help creating a home that you love, please visit me online at NikkiKlugDesign.com or call me at 619-948-7173.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis at michaelgaddis.com. My special guest today is Joel Weissler of the Weissler Law Group. That's wealthpreservationattorneys.com. Joel is one of San Diego County's top estate planning attorneys. Now, before the break, we were talking about estate planning. Asset protection. How does asset protection help you with, let's say, elder law? How does it relate to elders?
For seniors, for elder law planning, you look at protecting your nest egg. You've worked a whole lifetime, and you want to keep what you have. You want to pass it on as a legacy for your children. And the costs of care, the costs of aging are the adversary. It isn't that you're going to be in a car accident. It isn't that you're going to get sued for a business. It's that you're going to have greater and greater expenses. 1 in 3 seniors will need long-term care at some point in their life. And it's not cheap. If someone needs to be in a care facility, the average monthly cost is $8,092 a month in California. That's huge. And the cost of in-home care, if someone needs round-the-clock care, it's amazing. It's even higher if they need around-the-clock.
Well, this is an area of law that I think is really pertinent to me because, as I said, I do a lot of reverse mortgage. So I interact with a lot of people in that demographic. I am constantly talking to people that are, seniors that are a lot of them want in-home care services. One of the reasons why they approach me per se is to find a way to stay in their home as long as they can and get in-home care services. So this elder law area is something that I think is really interesting. And I want to ask you a question. Elder law is not just about the elderly person. It's about the family members too. Isn't that correct?
Oh, absolutely. And if you can find a way to have extra help in the home, it takes a huge burden off a family. Well, when you have a senior who needs help in the home, you're pulling their children, their grandchildren away from the rest of their life. They lovingly will give that time, but it's a kind of pain and extra tension that many seniors don't want to inflict on their families.
Well, I think that's what's really important is that as all of our loved ones get older, we need to realize that they need to be taken care of, and that there is going to be a time when they're going to need assistance.
They will, and most seniors don't know the benefits, the entitlements that are available to them to pay for that care. For instance, if you have a senior who served in the military during wartime, with the correct arrangement of their affairs, they can qualify for a senior and their spouse for a little bit over $2,000 a month from the VA to take care of their in-home care or to help pay for assisted living.
Well, I think you hit on a very good point there. I mean, a lot of people just don't know what's available and how it can necessarily impact you in a positive way. And going to somebody like yourself that is obviously very well versed in benefits for elderly benefits. I mean, it can really be beneficial for them to talk to somebody like you.
It can make a huge difference. Most people pay for their care until they have nothing left, and only then do they seek out an attorney or a social worker. They're broke. The time is run to protect what they had. If they come in earlier, as they get older, or when the first signs of disability begin to show, we can protect their home, we can protect their nest egg, and get them that care.
You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. My special guest today is Joel Weisler of the Weisler Law Group. That's wealthpreservationattorneys.com. And I think you mentioned something that I actually see all the time. And that's the point where people come to me when they've exhausted all of their funds and the only thing they have left is their house, and they don't have whatever equity they have in their house, and that's why they want to reverse mortgage to try to find a way to stay there. But what you're saying is, look, don't wait until that point in time occurs. Don't wait until you've exhausted everything. You need to have a good plan. Again, that word plan comes into play. It came into play with estate, it came into plan with asset, now it's coming into play again with the word elder. You have to have a plan so that you can properly prepare for basically being in that situation.
I mean, that's what it's all about. And the individual, the senior, needs to be involved. Assuming they're on good terms with their children should be involved to be ready as things happen. And aging happens unless you are struck down by something else first, a heart attack that kills you or a car accident that kills you. We all will get older. We will all need care, and planning for it is incredibly important. I mean, here in California, we deny getting older. But in order to protect your nest egg, if you have a home, you have a modest amount of assets, you have to plan in advance.
Well, let me ask you a question. You're familiar with how reverse mortgages work?
I am.
Now, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, Does a reverse mortgage have a negative impact on a person's ability to obtain Medi-Cal or supplemental Social Security benefits? What is the answer to that?
If it's done with the wrong structure around it, it can.
Okay. And what would be a good structure to put in place?
Well, and it takes the right reverse mortgage broker to work with it. The home ideally should be in the right type of trust before the reverse mortgage is put in place. It can be done afterwards, though it's more difficult, because otherwise, if you apply for Medi-Cal, Medi-Cal will provide whatever it does, in-home care and the like. But when you pass away, Medi-Cal comes knocking and says, hey, whatever you've got, pay us back for what we've paid. If the home is in the right kind of trust, Medi-Cal can't go to that home and demand that it be sold to pay them back.
So, and this is where it's crucial because, I actually care about my clients, and I think it's really important that whatever they do, they have a solution. And it seems like a lot of things are intermixed here. It seems like estate planning and reverse mortgages are kind of intermixed, even taking title to property. All of these issues seem to be kind of, coming to a head here, that it's really important that you talk to somebody that can help you make sure that you're structured properly. I mean, structure is another word for plan, but I mean, you have to structure your life so that you could maximize your benefits and reduce your exposures, as I guess what we're saying.
It isn't that you have to, it's that you should. And unfortunately, many people don't, and they lose their whole life's work, and their family suffers because they don't.
Well, and I think that just a lot of it, I don't know if it's procrastination. I don't know if it's because people are, they're just unwilling to pay for quality assistance. But I'm of the belief that whatever you pay for, if you go to the right person, they're going to make it back for you tenfold, maybe 100-fold.
Never mind going to the right person or the wrong person. The truth is that people hate going to attorneys. Going to an attorney for most people is not a happy thing, even if they're going to get a good result, even though it helps them, especially here in California. Going to an attorney is like going to the dentist. You put it off if you can, and unfortunately suffer a lot of extra pain if you don't go. It's to the extent to try and make people feel more comfortable. For clients that we see in the afternoon, we bake fresh chocolate chip cookies just to make people feel more comfortable, because it's not a comfortable environment for most people. Most people are uncomfortable seeing an attorney.
Well, I think that's probably true too. It's just, it's sad because, attorneys are not monsters. And as you can tell by listening to Joel here, he's a very friendly guy. And in case none of you were able to notice, he's a little under the weather today, but he still took time out of his day to come in here and see us. And, I really appreciate you doing that, Joel. I mean, I know that it's been hard, and I know you've been coughing a lot, but you've been providing us, I think, with extremely valuable information here. And as I said, I think anybody who is looking for an estate plan of any sort, or is just thinking about planning when it comes to anything related to anything we spoke about today, you can call Joel Weisler at 619-281-1888. He's got one of those catchy numbers, people. 619-281-1888. This is Joel Weisler of the Weisler Law Group. That's wealthpreservationattorneys.com. And your website is very informational. I looked through it. It had a lot of good information to it. So if you do have some questions, feel free to go to wealthpreservationattorneys.com and basically check out what Joel has on there. And any additional questions you have, I'm sure you just give Joel a call and he'd be glad to set up a consultation for you. That's 619-281-1888. So I want to thank you, Joel, for coming in today. It's been a pleasure having you.
Oh, the pleasure's mine.
So it's that time now. My producer's over there telling me I have less than 1 minute, so it's time for me to say goodnight to you all, and I hate doing it, but you've been listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at michael@michaelgaddis.com or visit my website, michaelgaddis.com, for more information. Thank you so much, and you've been listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer.
In a recent Wall Street Journal survey, 42 business and academic economists ranked all the Fed officials on the usefulness of the officials' statements in determining the course of monetary policy. Not surprisingly, Janet Yellen was ranked number one, followed by Fisher, Dudley, and Lockhart. Meanwhile, the Fed Funds Futures is predicting roughly a 70% chance of a rate hike in December. Conforming no-point 30-year fixed mortgage rates average 4%, with 15-year rates closer to 3.25%. Now for something completely different, did you know that President James Garfield was multilingual? He actually wrote in ancient Greek with one hand while simultaneously writing Latin with the other hand. For more information on home loans or real estate, visit our website at aramco.biz or call me at 800-600-7021. This is Meron Aram for The Craig Sewing Show.